Hi, I'm Rachel Abbasi. Welcome to the Recovery Daily podcast. As always, thanks for spending time with me. So, when I was working in my career, especially during the beginning, I used to say that everything I know I learned on Google. And I mean, it's true because I went to school for math and my career led me and some family adventures led me to do marketing. And I had no background in marketing. So it was really a lot of Googling and learning things through looking them up online. So the other day I was sitting in a sobriety meeting and I don't know where this came from. I don't know if it was in the reading or if it was just, I think it was in a reading. But what I heard is everything I needed to learn, I learned in AA. And I thought, absolutely. Like the version, Rachel version 2.0 and 3.0, the sober version of Rachel and the stroke survivor version of Rachel. Everything that I used to help me cope, surface joy, all of it I learned from the 12 steps. And it's really fascinating to me because when I look back on my life as Rachel version 1.0, drunk Rachel, um, who was not physically sober or emotionally sober and was spiritually naive, I would say, um, I felt like all of my problems were outside of me. Like, and alcohol was the answer to my anxiety. Like, it calmed my anxiety. When I was uncomfortable, I could just have a couple drinks. And so, anytime I was going to go out somewhere, I would have a couple drinks prior to leaving. So that insecurity was the solution was alcohol. And any kind of emotional pain, I would drown with alcohol. What I what I didn't understand back then when I was drowning my emotional pain and my fears with alcohol was that I did not realize there was a different way to grieve. I didn't know there was a different way to process pain. I thought that, for instance, when somebody passes away, I just thought I was different and the pain of losing someone was permanent, doesn't heal, doesn't change. And so I just thought that alcohol was what allowed me to cope, to deal with it, to deal with the pain and the fear that went along with that pain. I thought that I was broken and alcohol hid that from other people that I was broken. Um, I thought my problems were my broken emotions. I thought my problems were other people who didn't understand me and how emotional I am, how sensitive I am. That's a big deal. Like, I've run across so many people in my life since I got sober that talk about how sensitive they are. So the solution to that sensitivity was alcohol. It numbed all of these things. I thought that my problem was everything outside of me, and the alcohol allowed me to deal with it. Other people, stress, my circumstances, any trauma that I experienced in my life, work, the people at work, my relationships that were pretty good, but when something went wrong, alcohol was going to fix that. That's what I thought. Like alcohol was keeping me from addressing anything. It was really allowing me to just keep withstanding life, um, cope with life, like cope with my reaction, my inner reactions to life. And eventually, I got to the point where if I did not have alcohol, my inner reactions, it became not only an emotional reaction, like it was when I was in middle school and high school and college, but I started to actually have a physical reaction to everything that was going on outside of myself. I did not realize that in order to make life easier, I could address the problems. That the problem was actually internal, it wasn't external. And alcohol was preventing me from learning how to live, learning how to adapt. Like alcohol was keeping me from adapting. So, um, when I went into my sobriety program, I thought that I thought like I knew I needed to stop drinking because my liver was dying. But I didn't know still that there was a different way to live. I just thought, okay, now I'm gonna have to live the same way that I'm living, but without my medication, my quote unquote medication. Um, Nothing in my life has been more impactful than getting sober. Because my program did not just teach me how to not drink, it slowly allowed me to address the suffering that I was feeling. I slowly was able to see more clearly, and the steps taught me how to open my mouth and talk about the pain. Um, I was drinking and just stuffing the pain. I call it my dark place. Like I was just everything that happened to me because I was a victim. Everything that happened to me, I I just let it happen and I just pushed it down. Okay, this is what happened. Nobody understands me. Nobody understands my pain. How is somebody going to understand my pain when I don't tell them? Like, you know how, for you females out there, and probably males too, I wouldn't know because I'm a female and I only talk about my experience. But for those of you who have dated someone in the past and you think, like, well, why didn't they call me? why didn't they call me after our date or something like that? Or don't they know that talking to that other person makes me jealous? Like, why are they doing that? And then you just, for me, just crawl in under my covers and sit in my bed and write a poem about it, about how nobody in the world understands me. And you know what I mean? Because I didn't say anything. I didn't talk about it. How is somebody supposed to understand me if I don't open my mouth and share me with them? Um, when I think about my marriage as it relates to it, there are certainly still times that I keep things to myself. But when I think about it, the times that I keep things to myself, I'm holding a grudge and I'm expecting him to be able to figure it out. And inevitably, either I need to get over it or I need to talk to him about it. Because if I don't do one of those things and I just allow it to fall down into my dark place, then it is adding to my suffering. And I don't need to do it. Like I have a choice today. Um, Alcohol did not magically, like I stopped drinking and the suffering magically goes away. That's not what happened for me. Um, and I don't know that that happens to anyone. That's why the steps are there because early on it taught me that the world doesn't revolve around me, which I knew because I was isolating and the world was still moving on without me. So it's not that. Um, it teaches me that I don't have to figure things out alone. I don't have to let life happen to me and figure it out by myself. That there are solutions outside of me. And whether that is God, whether that is my own understanding of a higher power, or if that is the psychiatrist, family, the sobriety fellowship, like stopping drinking allowed me to contemplate that ha- that idea of building relationships, of connection. And that was just early on in the program. And then later, after I recognized that I don't have to figure this stuff out alone, then the program tells me, okay, so now that you know that you're not alone and you don't have to do this by yourself, let me stand beside you, meaning a sponsor and my sobriety fellowship. Why don't I stand beside you and let's talk about what's going on inside of you? And that was the beginning for me of relief when I started opening my mouth and talking about my suffering. So I not only could see clearly because I wasn't drinking anymore, but the steps like guided me through, and they still guide me through how to deal, not cope, but deal with things, like process things, take action about things. The alcohol was shutting down my fears, but like numbing my fears, my shame, my uncertainties. And while it was shutting down that stuff emotionally, it was also slowly shutting down my the ability for my body to respond physically respond. Um, so for example, that's why you can't drink and drive because the alcohol slowly eats away at our ability to function properly, right? Well, with how it impacts what people see about us physically, imagine what it's shutting down inside of me, in my organs. So I naively did not know that one could drink themselves to death. I didn't know that. I'm like, well, it has to be something else. It's not just the alcohol. Well, that's what it does. As much as alcohol numbs fear, shame, overwhelm, and uncertainty, it also numbs my reactions, my physical reactions, and it numbs my organs. And so everything within my fingertips is being numbed by alcohol. So I'm just like this shell that is walking through the world. When I entered my sobriety program, I did more than stay away from picking up a drink. And that alone took me several years to commit to that. I kept trying to, okay, negotiate with, all right, well, I won't drink during this time, or I'll only have these many. And that's in the big book. Like it talks about that negotiation. It wasn't until like no matter what decision I tried to make to be able to drink and still live, it wasn't going to work for me. So I got into the program. I committed to not drinking. I finally said, I can't drink no matter what. I finally said, I'm taking all suggestions from the program. I'm not going to pick and choose. I'm going to turn off my wanter. I'm not going to pick and choose anymore what I want to do. But if the fellowship tells me, and I mean the people or the literature, tell me that I need to get an addiction therapist, then that's what I'm going to do. If my program tells me that I need to read chapters 85 and 86 from the big book, that's what I'm going to do. If if my fellowship tells me that I need to go bowling with several of them for a couple hours on a Saturday, then that's what I'm going to do. Like I needed to learn how to be uncomfortable. These little outings that I did outside of the program, those all served a purpose for me. They taught me how to get uncomfortable, how to connect with other people. And then slowly, as I did that, I started to not be so afraid of people. I started to be not so afraid of my reactions to people. I started through practice to learn how to pause when I'm exposed to something that I didn't like. I learned that I don't have to react to that. It's not going to kill me. Um, that I can sit in that discomfort and nothing's going to happen to me. I didn't know you could do that. I really did it. I just thought if I was uncomfortable, then I need to drink and make it go away. So I learned essentially how to feel and how to survive. Yeah, survive without the need to escape. Um, so I hear all the time in my program that I don't just have a drinking problem, I have a thinking problem. And what that means for me, and this is like my character defects, that's what I call them, that that still rise to the surface frequently. And I laugh about it because it is humorous. Once I'm able to see it, and once I'm able to see that it's not going to kill me, I'm able to kind of, with levity, look at it and recognize that those are the human parts of me that God gave me that are gifts. I mean, yeah, they're character defects, but they're gifts because I get to learn something from them. So, catastrophizing, my mind catastrophizes constantly. My need to control other people, places, and things. That still happens. And I learn, even not being at work, um, I learned to let go in my own house, that I don't get to control this whole household, that I have a partnership. And when I was in my previous marriage, I think I was constantly trying to control everything. And that wasn't fair. I mean, I know every relationship there's two parts to it, but I get to look at my role now and learn from things that before, when I was drinking, I couldn't see clear enough. Um, I'm always trying to predict what's going to happen and prepare myself for it instead of leaning back, like I say all the time, opening my arms and being like, okay, life, I'm ready for you. And whatever happens, just trusting that I've got the tools that I need in order to respond to life. I have a tendency to obsess. I don't know if you have realized that yet, but even with my hobbies, I have a tendency to obsess. I have a tendency to obsess about the future, and I have a tendency to replay the past. I have a tendency to want to escape from discomfort. Even to this day, like, if I don't mentally escape anymore, but I will physically escape. If I'm uncomfortable, I will leave. And so I'm still have a tendency to try to protect myself from discomfort. Um, but I'm learning, when I'm uncomfortable, it doesn't mean that I'm not safe. When I'm uncomfortable, I'm still loved. And when I'm uncomfortable, I'm enough. Like, I'm human. And I don't always feel like I'm one step away from a disaster, from everything falling apart in my life. Um, if I didn't stop drinking, my thinking would remain untreated because I wouldn't be able to look at it. My sobriety has taught me that feelings are not facts, that all of that stuff, the sensitivity that I was talking about early in the episode, that sensitivity that I have is not, it's true to me and it's real for me, but the sensitivity that I have doesn't mean, again, that I'm unsafe or that I'm not loved, that I'm in danger. Like, my feelings are not instructions for how I need to behave. Just like urges are not instructions. Fear is not instruction. Like, all of that stuff going on between my ears are not instructions for how I need to behave. Um, they are a part of being human. And I have a program now that allows me to recognize that and and address it. And a lot of times, I think about that little girl inside of me that's still there. And I talked about it yesterday. And I think about how a lot of those feelings make me think of her, because she is more fearful than I am. She feels unsafe sometimes, and she feels unloved and like she's not enough sometimes. And so my job as a sober adult, Rachel version 2.0 and 3.0, is to comfort her. That piece of me that that is still very vulnerable to the world outside of myself. That piece of me that didn't learn yet because I kept drinking over top of all of that discomfort. Um, I try not to avoid discomfort. I try not to isolate and chase immediate relief. Instead, I'm learning progress, not perfection. I'm learning how to accept because I can't heal from something that I don't admit um, admit to. I am learning how to surrender to life on life's terms. I'm learning how to cultivate hope in times of fear because my psychiatrist taught me an important lesson is that, and that is that I don't, as a complex human being, I don't feel one thing at a time. And so I can be fearful, but still lean on my fellowship and my psychiatrist and my family to cultivate positive emotions, even when I'm feeling fearful. Um, Learning how to let go, using my God box, which is really a virtual, do you call it that when it's not online, but it's it's in and I envision, I don't think that's virtual. I envision my God box and putting things in it when I feel like I want control and I know intellectually that I can't control it. Like I used to not even know that I couldn't control it. Like I was ready to change you. If you were somebody that I didn't like or you behaved in a way that I didn't like, I was going to change you and I was going to make you be the way that I want you to be. So I realize intellectually now that I can't change people, places, and things. And I find peace when I release that idea that I can change, that I can control other things outside of my fingertips. Um, I am constantly having self-talk that is repeatedly bringing me back to being honest. Because I can lie to myself without even knowing that I'm lying to myself. I can find myself being judgmental and without being honest with myself and being like, you're being a bitch right now, then I can't get humble. So being honest allows me to be humble and being willing to be honest. You know, the willingness is what comes first. Um, and all of this really affects my daily living in all of my affairs, including the super, super hard stuff that I had no idea was coming my way when I first got sober. So, like now, after stroke, my alcoholism, I'm grateful that I have been through the steps to apply them to my sobriety so that I already had a foundation when I had my stroke and ended up with a vestibular disability because I had already learned how to surrender and how to accept. I had already learned how to ask for help and do the next right thing. And in the beginning, when I'm like, you got to deal with insurance, you got to go to all these doctors, I had to get honest with myself and realized that I didn't have control over this disability that and instead of feeling like I'm a victim of the world and once again Rachel has to learn the hard way and let's give her a stroke and a disability and now let's see what she does. I don't feel like I'm a victim. I feel like it's another affair. Like what we say in sobriety is that apply these principles to all of our affairs. This stroke and vestibular recovery is just another affair that I get to apply the program to. And because I had built those emotional and spiritual muscles, those habits, I feel like I've done a better job at going through the grieving process. I mean, it's been hard. I don't mean to sound like Pollyanna, but it's been really, really hard. And if you keep up, if you're a lifetime listener to the podcast, like I've talked in all honesty about how, sorry, I have stuff in my eyes. I've talked in all honesty about the times that I didn't feel hope and I felt like I couldn't accept um, because I wanted to understand everything and be certain about my future in order to accept. And I wasn't getting what I needed from like, I guess supportive wise. I wasn't verbally getting what I needed to hear from my doctors. So I wasn't willing to accept yet because I didn't know what I was accepting. Am I accepting a permanent disability? I don't know. Nobody's telling me that I'm permanently disabled. So learning how to accept during a time of uncertainty, that's been really, really hard. And I forget what it was like in early sobriety, what that uncertainty felt like, but it was different, but it was parallel to this experience. Because I had to stop fighting reality, but I didn't really know where I was going. I didn't know where I was going to end up. I had no idea the beauty that was going to unfold for me as long as I practiced the program, as long as I learned how to live inside discomfort without escaping it. If I stayed connected and didn't isolate, there were so many times I didn't want to go to that Saturday morning sobriety meeting, but I went anyway. I did the next right thing because I made that commitment that I'm going to turn off my wanter and I'm going to do the next right thing. And it was getting up out of my recliner that uh, I still romanticize that that recliner after all this time. Anyway, that's another story. But I love that recliner. It was super comfortable. But getting out of that recliner, and even though I wanted to isolate, get out of the recliner, go to the meeting, and listen to other people tell my story so that I can practice the program by listening, like, how did they deal with this thing in life and how did they apply the program to it? My program has taught me how to survive a life that I couldn't control. I didn't know that's what was coming my way. One of the greatest gifts of the program has been the pause. So being able to, speaking of control, control what's going on between my ears. Like I said earlier, not allowing my thoughts to dictate my behavior. My emotional reactions were no longer like the driver of my behavior. And fear was not keeping me isolated from people, that I was learning how to step towards people. And I used to be uncomfortable to even go to the grocery store. Like literally was shaking when I would go to the grocery store because I was so afraid of the world, of um people. Like my nervous system was just completely shot, and I had zero emotional stability. I felt like I was physically unsafe when I would do things like go to the grocery store. But this pause is something that like soothes my nervous system. It's like sometimes the pause for me is really just stopping everything that I'm doing and taking a deep breath. Kind of like back when I used to smoke and you'd go outside and you'd pause everything in your life and just take deep breaths of nicotine. That's what that's what the pause is for me, but it doesn't have to do with nicotine anymore. Side note, one of the ways that I stopped smoking was to do exactly that, to go outside and just like I would if I were smoking and take deep breaths as if I was smoking. So quitting smoking was very much similar to this idea of the pause. So the next right thing for me is not always an action. Sometimes it's restraint and rest and surrender and stillness. Um, and over time, I learned how to trust myself again. I've learned how to value myself, to feel like I think I mentioned it yesterday. I'm 100% successful at living so far because I'm still here. And I love that. I love being able to sit with my feelings and not be afraid of them. I love being able to ask for help, even though it's still hard. I love to know that I'm not alone and that uncertainty doesn't mean that there's no road ahead. It's just that sometimes I need to just take a step forward anyway and trust that I've got what it takes to deal with whatever's there when I get there. Um, Even when life is painful, I have what it takes to walk through it. Um, So my program has given me ways to survive as a human being, but it's beyond that. It's ways to my life doesn't feel like surviving anymore. It used to just feel like I was underwater and and all I could do was come up for air and take a breath every now and then. And now it's like I'm on the surface and I'm just jumping like a dolphin. I'm jumping out of the water. I'm living. It's more than just freedom from alcohol. It's learning how to ride all the waves, um, good and bad. And I'm super grateful for it. So thank you for listening today, and I will talk to you next time.